Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are going to have another exciting episode, one that I think will be familiar to most people. But first, how's it going, sister? What's happening?
Doing okay. Glad to be here.
So, today we are going to talk about something that we are all going to face at some point when life doesn't go as planned. And let's be real, for those of us recovering from the effects of ultra processed food, that feeling can be overwhelming. You would think that you think you're on the right track, and then suddenly, boom, setbacks, disappointments, and unexpected turns.
So when we think about today, kind of going back and forth, talking with each other about some of your questions and how to navigate these moments with resilience instead of falling back into old patterns. So let's jump in.
Yep. So I am going to start out by putting Jamie on the spot. I want you to tell us a time when life completely veered off path that you thought it would take and how it affected your recovery or if it affected your recovery, because we all have those moments. So can you think of something that jumps out to you, a time in your life where that happened?
Yeah, I think that again, I've talked a lot about it on the podcast, but my health crisis the last 18 months has definitely been that, and totally restructured everything that about my life and about my recovery that I had to sort of
Yeah.
focus on.
Yeah. And for me, I never planned when I was this dreamy-eyed young girl that my first marriage would end in divorce, especially after three kids, and not knowing if I would ever find another partner, especially with these little children. My youngest was a year and a half. I mean, that's not something that men are looking for, three kids with the youngest 1.5. Somehow, 6 months later, I met my current husband and he got sucked in. And here we are 30 years later. We're coming up on our 30-year anniversary. But I so vividly remember those moments as some of my darkest hours of loneliness and despair. It was total rock bottom for me. It felt like someone actually had pulled the rug right out from underneath me, and I felt completely alone. So, as I mentioned, I was 30 at the time, not in recovery. And now looking back, I can see all those skills that I have learned through recovery that could have made that experience where I literally felt like dying at some point. I mean, I didn't want to die. What I wanted was out of pain. It's just like when you have these intense cravings, you don't really want the sugar, you just want out of the pain. But I mean, there are times I could barely function, which is not ideal when you're a mother of these three little kids who are relying on you. So for me, the tools I've learned in recovery apply to all areas of life. I had to learn that failure isn't the end, it's just a redirection. But at the time, all I wanted actually was a quick fix. I would have done anything just to stop the pain. So, Jamie, when in your life, do you feel like you have learned that lesson of how to reframe what might look like a setback as to something that we just learn from and edit our course?
Yeah, I mean, life on life's terms. This is the crux of what I've worked on in recovery for many years at this point. The my work since 2017, 18 in the 12-step world has given me a lot more context here. I've learned that I can't control anything life gives me, especially if it has to do with other people, other places, and other things.
Right.
So I have to just control my recovery behaviors, tools, resources, my recovery routines. Those are the things I can control, and that allows me to respond, not react to the things that life gives me. Certainly not perfect, but that's just the way it goes. For me to try to
Mm.
control anything outside of me so that I'll feel better is a definition of insanity. It really is. Like there's the idea that I could change other things or change other people is insane.
Yeah.
So for me, when I learned that, I was able to just let go and turn to God and pray for His guidance and wisdom and peace and assistance, so that I could figure out what I needed to do. That was in my control, which really that I just listed it. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and that's leading right into what I want to say next is that one of the payoffs to be being on the other side of 50 is that you just start to realize, you just start to settle down a little bit because you realize things just start, they always work out. I know it does not seem like it in the moment, but somehow in the universe, things just fall into place, which is a wonderful calming mechanism. Unfortunately, you do have to get older in order, in order to get there. So it's a catch 22. So that helps in not getting too worked up even over the missteps that we take. And the other huge thing that I have learned in life is that when things don't work out as planned, you just have to say, okay, universe, it's exactly what you were saying. I'm going to
Mhm.
follow your lead here. There's a reason that things are coming as they are. And so I have really just learned to nod my head, shrug my shoulders, and I'll say, okay, what's next here? And but that did take years to come to. That did not just happen overnight. And now, as I said, my favorite reaction is just a simple, okay, with the shoulder shrug.
Mhm.
My oldest daughter lives in Edmond, a suburb of Oklahoma City, and she was taking her 6-year-old to Dallas recently to visit the American Girl doll factory there for this lovely mother-daughter excursion that they had worked on, and they were so excited to go to. And I took my youngest daughter there. There's one in Chicago when she was little. So it was really an exciting thing for them. So partway there, my granddaughter starts throwing up, and they had
Ugh.
to pull over and take care of the mess. And my daughter was devastated because they'd just been planning this for such a long time and they were so excited. But as they got her cleaned up back in the car, did a U-turn, we had a conversation on the phone and we agreed that it wasn't meant to be. And possibly she was being protected from something she didn't even know about at that time. So,
Mhm.
understandably disappointing, but with a little bit of reframe, it made it more tolerable and
Mhm.
everyone was less heightened over it. And even though there were changes in plans, it just felt more accepting. And they were able to look forward to a quiet day at home spent together, resting and getting better. So, the question that I would ask you is, are you good when it comes to accepting what life brings, or do you try to fight it and rearrange the universe?
No, I've stopped doing all of those things.
Mhm.
Uh, there was a time before I found, true recovery and my walk with God that I would try to rearrange and manhandle life, and that was just that all that did was create problems for me. Problems for me personally and emotionally, problems for me with my relationships. It was just a fool's errand. So one of the principles in recovery that I've learned to adopt as much as often as I can, I really try. It's again, I'm not perfect at it, but is just acceptance. Acceptance is really the answer to all of the problems I have. Anything that I'm uncomfortable about the way it is, accepting the way it is, and trusting that God will work it out for my good, even if it's not the way I wanted it to be. My good is not the way I wanted it to be. P.S. My good might be a bigger thing that I didn't even realize. So it's just accepting. That's the first step, right? And there's for folks that practice other spiritual walks like Buddhism, that the acceptance work is all a big part of the Buddhism practice.
Mhm.
But for me being, a Christian that who follows someone who follows the principles of recovery and 12-step recovery, that really is it. It's acceptance. You could call acceptance a different version of faith. Faith that the universe, or who I call God, is going to work things out in
Yeah,
ways that
and
I could never anticipate.
I'll bet you anything that just didn't happen overnight for you. I bet that was a process and a few lessons learned along the way to get there.
Yes. Mhm.
Do you
Yes,
have
and
a
it's a much
pivotal
better
moment
way
in
to
your
live
life?
now.
Did you have a pivotal moment in your life where you went like, okay,
No, it was more just, they say it's a light switch or a dimmer switch. For me, it was a dimmer switch. It wasn't
yeah.
just there are some people who it was different. It was a light switch, but for me, it
Hmm.
was slowly over time. I got to the point where I, realized that to try to control anything or to try to reject the way things are because I didn't like them or hadn't planned for them was really just a waste of my energy and time.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And I love that dimmer switch analogy because that's how I operate too. I've had very few big booms, light bulb
Mhm.
moments, but it's just a slow burn. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the other things I want to talk about is that point when it comes to our health, like so many, like I used to think, okay, I'm just going to eat whatever I want right now because I'm in the middle of this deep, deep craving and it's so painful. I'm just going to fix it later. So, people often think that cravings is just desire, but really it's just pain. And you're just trying to get out of that pain. And I didn't want the sugar as much as I wanted out of that pain, but I was just too uncomfortable in those moments before recovery. So I just always gave in and really, I had no future self thinking. I was just living in the moment of I need to get rid of this. And the fastest way I know is to eat the sleeve of cookies. So, but as time went on, that no longer was working for me because my body started to change. My pants started getting tighter and I did not like where this was headed and the irony, this is what's so funny. The more that you eat sugar, the more the more the cravings come. And then the more that you are constantly amped up from the cravings, the more heightened the cravings are, and the more drive you have to eat the cookie to get out of the pain. I mean, it's laughable, right? It's all in a backwards way. I was a nervous wreck all the time because I just was trying to get back on track and I could not shake that addiction to the sugar. And I felt like I had just lost control over my body. And I didn't understand what was happening either. Is part of the upset too when these episodes would just wash over me and I did not understand the science behind what was happening in my brain when it came to sugar or that addiction I had. It was just no control, which was terrifying to be in that position of no control. So, anyway, it's something where life did not turn out as I planned to have this addiction to sugar that I think I developed probably in utero from the minute my
Mhm.
eyeballs were open. I loved it from the minute I could think straight and make my own choices. But the good part is because it was so bad, it drove me to keep looking for solutions that I didn't have. I knew it wasn't normal. I didn't know how to describe it. I wasn't able to talk to anybody about it, but in one sense, it was motivating because I wanted to get out of that cycle. So in a way, the discomfort can be highly motivating to get you out of that dark place and into the light. And if it hadn't bothered me and my pants weren't getting tight, I might have been stuck in that continual sugar binge cycle to this day. I mean, I don't know what would have motivated me to get out of it unless I had become sick in some way. So, have you ever had these painful things? Have you ever looked at them as a way just kind of point you to higher ground as a way out?
Yep. Again, the cravings, most of the time for me, my cravings are, I'm able to process them as thoughts, look at them as thoughts and allow them to move on. But for me, the cravings are like we call them dashboard lights. They are indicators of some kind of, again, it could be nutrient deficiency, calorie deficiency. It could be a emotional issue that's unaddressed. It could be seeking comfort or, connection. Um, it is never about the food. It's never about the food. So for me, having any hard and fast rules about any food groups sends me back into those food groups. The minute that I get a taste of them, I think I'll never be able to eat this again, so I better eat all of it right now. And that's the essence of an eating disorder. So for me, I don't touch the black and white. I try to look at shades of gray and I ask myself, how do I feel when I eat those things? And the answer for me is especially highly processed baked goods, sugar stuff, cookies, cakes, all of that. I feel like junk after I eat them. And it's not for me after my body changed from the mold illness I and the autoimmunity began, it's really not about weight gain anymore. It's about my making my body not hurt.
Yeah.
So there's foods like gluten, there's foods like sugar and processed foods that make my body hurt. And my brain, I'm not as sharp. So I stay away from them for a very different reason. But it's not that I can't have them. I'm choosing not to have them. it's not because I will eat them all, it's because they make my body hurt. So it's a totally different perspective. It's a mindset shift. Because when I started thinking about all or nothing, and there was a period of time where I was very, very low carbohydrate because I had a lot of systemic inflammation. The doctors needed to decrease very fast. So that worked, but what it did was it sent me back into that binge and restrict cycle around it. And
Oh,
that the very fact that the minute I thought I couldn't have something, it was like I wanted it. So that became unsustainable for me. And for me, balance and sustainability are key when it comes to my food recovery. If I don't have either of those things, I don't have food recovery.
good
Um,
point.
so I have no hard and fast rules other than single ingredient single ingredient non-processed foods, right?
Mhm.
And if those are single ingredient non-processed foods, I do better with them. So for me, it's not about can or can't or will or won't. It's really about how can I fill my life with these single ingredient foods that make my body feel good. And there are some single ingredient foods that don't make my body feel good.
Good point.
Autoimmunity can cause that. So I'm mindful of it. The other thing that I need to remind myself to be mindful of is it's never about the food. If I think a cupcake is going to solve my issue, that's the issue. It's not that cupcakes need to be avoided the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And frankly, those things when I'm in a place to find a variety of that kind of food that doesn't make my body hurt, and I'm in a place where I'm celebrating or I'm really connected to the experience, I think that's part of what God created us to do. But that certainly is not something that I look at as a solution to my pain, right? The food. And that for many years it was the solution to the pain. And now it's okay, I've got other solutions, other tools, other resources and people that I connect with to tease out what's really behind the issue. And then those food cravings go away. And then if it is related to low calories, if it is related to my nutrients being off, then I need to look at, okay, it's a cupcake is never going to fill me in a way, truly a nutrient dense way that a plate of whole single ingredient foods that's, colorful and nutrient dense would. So there's so many moving parts for me. I don't the black and white just does not serve me. And there's there's ways to get to a point where you're comfortable in your own skin that there's those foods around you are not they're not they're not loaded guns anymore. They're just food.
Yeah. I love this discussion and I love that you brought up the not just the physical, but the mental effect too, as a reason to try and clean up your diet so you're not living in that anxiety ridden place and that painful place that these foods can invite. And I also love the point because Jamie's been at this for over 15 years, maybe
Yeah,
longer
since
now.
2008.
But isn't it interesting? I'd love for you to share about how where you started with your thinking versus where you are now ain't the same.
No, actually it's
Or
come full circle.
your capability of what you're able to accomplish. Sorry, I cut you off. I didn't hear what you said.
It's come full circle for me. When I started,
Oh,
I was told not to avoid any foods. I was told that all foods are okay, but there are certain foods that should be eaten first, and there are certain food that should be prioritized first, from a nutrient density perspective and a macronutrient balance perspective. But that there's no foods that are off limits, but there's a balance and there's a way of looking at it. I began my recovery that way, and I found myself as I progressed into recovery, um, I into my food recovery, I hadn't found, um, I began to grasp at straws because my eating disorder, what started as binge eating and overeating, and not even focused on the quality of food, it was just quantity of food that shifted, right? Then I shifted away from binge eating and I looked at restriction as the solution. I was not eating enough. I was not smart with the way I built my plate or fueled myself. I was getting away from some of the guidance and guidelines that I had spent about 4 years learning, and then found my way into this sort of weekly binge and restrict cycle, right? Where on the weekends I would overeat a couple of meals in such a big way that it would send the rest of the week into a very restrictive place.
Mm-hmm.
I threw in a lot of overexercising to try to balance it out. It was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because I was not building my food life in a way that was sustainable, right? I was out of balance and it was not sustainable. So
Mm-hmm.
then I found my way into that recovery group in 20, I guess 19, that you and I met in. And that recovery group took my balanced, go anywhere, kind of go with the flow approach to food, and it totally messed it up. It made me filled with fear. It talked about, abstinence and avoiding food groups and triggers and controlling all of the things that cannot be controlled. And it made me insane. It made me really insane around food and
Mm-hmm.
also very fearful. Um, and I had good friends that knew me for years and they were like, "What's going on with you? Like, you used to be like, do what you got to do. And, you would kind of find your way at a restaurant or order special. Now you don't go out. Now you don't do anything. Now you're like avoiding things. Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "That's because they don't understand." And I was like, and then I lived that way for probably 3, 4 years. And it made me sicker and sicker and sicker, more restricted, more fearful. And I still wasn't finding peace and balance. I was just controlling. So I realized
Mm-hmm.
that I had to let go and start listening to my body. That's what this illness allowed me to do. Start listening to my body. And my body tells me exactly what it needed. The only time, and this is a recent lesson, the only time that my body was screaming for baked goods and sugar laden crap was when I was on a course of hormone replacement therapy that was too high for me. And my
Oh,
body was screaming for this stuff. And I couldn't
wow.
figure out why, because it never
Mm-hmm.
really screamed for that stuff before. I would have a
Mm-hmm.
passing craving here and there, but I was always able to use my tools and kind of work through it,
Mm-hmm.
or plan for it, right? Or strategize and plan for it and enjoy it. Those days were gone with these hormones that I was on for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And when the levels were off, I would get these bone deep cravings and dream about donuts and like all of these things that I couldn't understand. I could not avoid it if I tried.
Mm-hmm.
And it was driving my whole life. My
Yeah.
whole life was
Miserable.
driven to get these foods. And of course,
Miserable.
I began to try to avoid them again and set my life up that I couldn't be exposed to them. And then the black and white thinking came back in, and that was just, it was horrible. So
Mm-hmm.
finally I realized what was going on, made some changes with my doctor. And once things balanced out in my body, all of that went away again. And I'm able to say, hey, if I'm going to want to eat some dessert, I'll just plan for it in my week, budget it into whatever that looks like for to keep things in balance, and make sure that I've done the work to be present, mindful, enjoying it, and then moving on. It's a totally that is a balanced experience for me.
Yeah, and I love that you and I have a little bit different perspective. I think it reaches a broader audience because I'm not where you are as far as I feel I don't feel great going out to restaurants. That does give me a little more anxiety. I do have a lot of work to do in that area. And I probably am not someone who would tempt fate with the desserts because my sugar addiction is just so off the charts. I feel safer just not going there, and I don't have the cravings and I don't want to wake them up. And so that scares me too. So for right now, where I am in my journey, I feel the most comfortable. I don't feel restricted at all. I mean, I don't have any negative. I just feel grateful that I'm not messing with that and it's not messing with me and I'm not going to upset the apple cart. So that's
Mhm.
where I am for now. And one thing that Jamie and I do agree on is what we think right now, that's possible it could change. Where we are right now may not always be the place where we will be as we grow and develop. So Anyway, I
Yeah.
just love the conversation and I love being able just to talk about it openly with absolutely no judgment, just acceptance for that, where that person is at that time. And we also agree on you got to know your triggers.
Mhm.
That's just part of just being a responsible human being. I know what I can do right now and I know what I can't do right now, and that I'm groovy with that. I just don't want to go back to that dark place, and so I'm in a constant state of growth and development to figure out what does that look like for me. And that's why Jamie and I don't put any food rules on anybody because everybody's different and they have to figure that same pattern out for themselves. So great conversation on that. So let's talk about solutions. How do we pivot when things fall apart? When life doesn't go as planned, what helps you get back on track without leaning on the ultra processed foods, which Jamie was just talking about so well a minute ago? So I'll start. For me, it was learning to reframe failure. And
Mhm.
instead of thinking I've messed up or, okay, I've got a flat tire, I'm going to slash the other three, I might has maybe I didn't eat. I don't want to eat over a mistake. I want to start asking myself, what is this moment teaching me? Jamie has said to me so many times when I've come to her with problems, she says, looks like there's an opportunity in there for you.
Mhm.
So you want to talk about some other solutions for you?
Yep. I mean, again, the biggest one that I've learned is to get out of yourself and go and serve others. So that's something I try to do, check in with someone, reach out to someone. I also have a community that I can connect with. There are some times when I'll still choose to isolate, to kind of do some self-care, but I immediately, maybe that lasts a night and then I'm like, okay, I've got to go and get out there and connect with people. So that's a big deal. Journaling helps. And, of course, talking with fellow travelers helps. And I would say for me, changing my location is always helpful, getting out and going for a walk, getting out and moving physically, moving my body, changing my location, change of scenery, that always helps. Anything that I can
Yeah,
do to get my blood flow back into my frontal lobe and out of my amygdala.
right.
That's it.
Right. I agree with all that. And another big one, as you know, we have at Real Food Recovery is a support system. We offer
Mhm.
7 hours of coaching a week. So that's 28 hours of coaching a month for only $79. And we know that recovery is a team sport. It's not a solo mission. So when you're struggling, isolation is the enemy, whether it's a friend, a
Mhm.
therapist, or even an online community such as ours. Having people to talk to makes a huge difference because connection breaks that spell of shame and isolation where addiction thrives. But true
Mhm.
emotional regulation happens in safe, supportive relationships. So when you talk to someone and feel truly seen, and understood, your nervous system begins to calm down. Then a real biological shift occurs, something food will never actually be able to give you. You really kind of indicated that earlier. Food is never going to regulate your nervous system. If what you're looking for is balance, food isn't going to do that for you,
That's
even if
right.
at the moment it might feel like it is.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like I said earlier, movement's important. And again, getting out there to change your scenery changes. If you're changing what you're looking at, your thoughts will change. And again, it's something that I've done for many years. There was a period of time when I was really sick and not feeling well that I could not do that. And I'm very glad that I can get back there.
Yeah. I agree. And I love the idea that you mentioned about movement because I love that the thought of meditating while moving. We've talked about that in the past before, and that's a game changer for me. That
Mhm.
active meditation and exercise just helps me so much. And out of curiosity, Jamie, what's the best advice someone has ever given you about handling life's disappointments? My mother always told me, "This too shall pass." I just
Mhm.
remember hearing that all my life. What about you? Any
Yep. Yep.
one-liners?
God always works it out.
Yeah.
Always. Sometimes it takes a long time, longer than I'd like, but it works out. It always does.
Mm-hmm. So before we finish up, I want to touch on the topic of success, or should I say redefining success? And you kind of hit on this a little bit ago, but when you look back, was there a moment where you realized your idea of success needed a reboot?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say definitely when I was diagnosed with the mold illness and the autoimmune condition, as a result of all of that, all of my thinking had to change around what success looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, I
For
love
sure.
that. And this is a huge topic and really work against people if we're not careful about the drive to be perfect. That perfectionism is the enemy. Recovery is not a Pinterest board. It's all about rewarding progress, not punishing yourself for being human. And this segues into one of the most important points of all that we should finish on, and that is compassion. This can be a brutal fight when it comes to recovery from ultra processed foods because it's so pervasive and we have to be on guard with constant triggers and cues in our environment. Do you want to say anything about the role of self-compassion that it plays for you in handling setbacks, especially when it comes to your food choices and
I would just
being
say self-compassion and self-love, those are critical for people to understand. For me, self-love starts with how I feed and fuel my body. Like it's not loving for me to eat food that makes my body hurt. And again, I guess I'm grateful for this autoimmune thing because my body now responds to food in ways that are way more nuanced than just a number on a scale. So
Mhm.
that is self-love for me um to take care of myself in a way that makes my body feel good and have energy and move well. So that's important. And I would say as far as the role of self-compassion in handling setbacks, just remember that there's always a silver lining in everything. It always could be worse. I mean, if you're still alive, PS,
Yeah.
there's one reason that it's not that bad. So um when I think about setbacks, right? I had all the setbacks in the way my body responded to food since I was very young. My body always
Mhm.
responded very, very poorly to food. Too much of it or too much of the wrong ingredient food. So I've always had to find ways to cope and ways to be resilient. And now I have the words for it. Before I just sort of had the actions around it. Now I have the words and the resources and the tools for it.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. Great discussion. You want to jump into the listener questions? You want to start off?
Yeah. So first question, how do I stop feeling like a failure every time I slip up and eat something I know isn't good for me? It's a learning opportunity. It's a learning opportunity to just write it down or record it or something, however you want to go back and reflect on it. Hey, I ate this and this is what it did for me. Good, bad, and ugly. If I learned something in years ago in my psychology world and the coaching work that I was doing to get certified. If people have habits that harm them, like even including addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, if people have habits that harm them, gambling addiction, there's also a reward somewhere in there, right? So it's really about understanding what the reward is versus the negatives. And helping them see that the negatives are far outweighing the rewards. And
Mm.
for food, again, this was back when I was trying to understand when I would eat certain things, it was making me gain weight, and I didn't want to gain weight anymore. Um, it was understanding that it was 30 took me I timed it. Took me 30 seconds to eat something that like a baked good or something that was very, very calorie dense and high calorie, high fat, very, bad for helping my body get to the goals that I wanted to have for it. Whether it was the way my body felt or looked back in the day, I would ask myself, was 30 seconds of this worth weeks of that? And once I looked at it, it seemed insane to me to
Mm-hmm.
to throw away weeks of my life for 30 seconds of pleasure. And
Mhm.
that can be extrapolated out to lots of different situations.
Yeah. Very. Very good point. Our next question is what do I do when I feel like I've lost all motivation to keep going? Oh, we have all been there. So when
Mhm.
motivation is gone, discipline and small habits have to take over. Sometimes we wait to feel like we want to do something, but in reality, action creates motivation, not the other way around. So you can ask yourself, why did I start this journey? What's the deeper reason I want to break free from ultra processed foods? And if you can connect to that, even when motivation is low, you will probably keep going.
Yes. How do you reset after a major setback without falling into an all or nothing mentality? So, again, I remind myself that setbacks are part of recovery, relapses, so to speak, are part of recovery. Um, Learn from it, understand what led you to it, unpack it, doing a root cause analysis, so to speak, unpack what led you to it, and learn from that, right? It's an opportunity to learn and forgive yourself and move on, keep going. Like all of the people I've worked with, especially around eating disorder recovery, have always, if I went to them and said, "Hey, I ate this food that I know makes me feel junky, or I know is going to put on weight, or I had a binge or whatever," they're like, "Okay, move on, move on." And that was such a critical place to understand that there's nothing to be gained except more punishment from punishing myself. There's just nothing, like, because it's the punishment and sparks invokes feelings of shame, and shame sends me right back into the addictive stuff. So for me, it is forgiving, it's learning, it's moving on, it's understanding it's all part of the process. I also give myself, when I'm really, like, let's say I'm coming out of it's been a while, but let's say I'm coming out of a binge, I would just give myself carte blanche to eat as much as I want of foods that do serve me. I don't restrict anything. And that helps me a lot. That restrictive thinking for me sets me up for all kinds of issues. So giving myself carte blanche for foods that make my body feel good and feel, you know, full and ready to tackle life, that helps me get out of that place of binging and restricting. And then I'm able to start, when those single ingredient foods are flowing, I'm able to start connecting with what my body is really telling me what it needs.
Mhm. No, I love that. Last one. Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right and still not getting the results you wanted? How did you handle that without turning to food for comfort? And of course, we've all felt like that. The progress is slow, slow, slow at times. Uh, and it can still be hard for me in moments when I feel like I'm doing everything right, which is why you often hear this referred to as a journey. So understanding that this is a lifelong process, that helps. This is not a quick fix. It's not a diet. It's literally a transforming process. So where we learn, this is just where we grow continually and continue to learn. So my famous line is, when feeling frustrated, is just stay the course. Just stay the course, stay the course,
Mhm.
stay the course. There is literally nowhere else to turn for success. This is the end of the line. There is no other answers other than doing the work that Jamie and I have talked about when it comes to dealing with the effects of these ultra processed foods in our life. But you have to remember, we've been doing that for decades of eating these foods. So it takes a while to come out of that. So take comfort in that you are not giving up, and know that food does not solve problems, it just creates them. So don't give food a job bigger than it was ever designed to do. So, Jamie,
Yes,
if you
yes,
want to
yes.
finish up with that
Yep. This
last
is
one.
It's been a great conversation. If you're listening now and you feel like life isn't going the way you planned, you're not alone. And life really has a way of leading all of us in directions we never expected. That's exactly what it's meant to do. And sometimes these detours bring us exactly where we need to be. So instead of fighting it, lean in, learn from it, and keep moving forward.
I agree. And if you took just one thing from today, let it be this. Setbacks don't mean failure. They're just part of the journey. And your worth isn't tied to your mistakes, it's tied to your resilience. So, most importantly, be kind to yourself, trust the process, and remember, you are capable of so much more than you think. And if you want to find out more about us or know about our book that's on Amazon, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's a number 4 and the letter U. Thanks, guys. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Thank you.